Hey, Geometry, and welcome back to another Wednesday. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about congruent figures. Hopefully you remember the word congruent means they're the same or have the same measure. So for example, if they're congruent angles, that means they're each the same. So they might be 40 degrees and 40 degrees or 90 and 90. Okay. If they're congruent segments, it means they're the same length. So if one's 5 inches, a congruent segment would also have to be 5 inches. Okay. Now, this first line right here says congruent polygons have congruent corresponding parts. Okay. Lots of words there. Congruent we already talked about. Polygons just means a shape that has straight sides around the edge that are all connected. So here's an example. This is a triangle. Okay, this is a four-sided figure. Those would both be polygons. Pretty much your typical shapes except an oval or a circle. Those would not be polygons because they have curves. Okay, now it says here, congruent, which we know, polygons have congruent corresponding parts. So corresponding, think back to last chapter. Corresponding meant it was like both of them were up to the top right, or my two shoes I said were corresponding because they were from the same set. Okay, they kind of match up. So if we look down here, it says find the measures of the numbered angles. So when we say numbered angles, like here there's a 1 and there's a 2. And we're trying to figure out what those angles have to be. Now it tells us triangle MLN is congruent to triangle QPR. So because they are congruent, and we know that congruent polygons have congruent corresponding parts, angle M here is the first term of the first triangle. It has to be congruent to angle Q, the first term of the second triangle. Now I'm just going to put a little red dot there so you can remember that. Okay. Now angle L was the second term, and it has to go with angle P, the other second term. So these will be the same. And then finally, angle N has to be congruent to angle R, because those are both the third term. Okay. Now, if we look here, and we're trying to figure out what is 1 going to be. 1 is in angle L. L was the second one. It matched up with P. P over here had a right angle. It's 90 degrees. So I know that angle 1 is going to have to equal 90 degrees. And likewise now, angle 2, we can find. Angle 2 is over here at N. N was the third term, so it matched up with the R, which was also the third term, and that's 40 degrees. Okay, and that's all we have to do. Now, that worked on a triangle. It also is going to work over here. So A will have to go with F. B will have to go with G, because they're both the second term. Okay. C will have to match up with H. And finally, D has to match up with I. Now, if we look here, spot 1 right here goes to B. We said that B was the second term, so it matches up with G. And so we know that angle 1 on this problem will have to be the same as G, which is 95 degrees. Now, just a quick refresher, try to remember what type of angle is that. And the answer is going to be an obtuse angle. Okay. Now, our second one, angle 2. Angle 2 is letter C. C matches up with H because they're the third ones, so that will be 60 degrees. Now think for a second, what type of angle is that? And the answer is acute. Okay. Now, as we move on to the next problem, we scroll down here, and the pictures make it nice. They give us something to look at, but we don't even need those always. Okay, if you look here, we have these two triangles. One's a reflection, and you can kind of get confused if you look at the pictures. So sometimes it's better just to look at this congruent statement. Okay, so our congruent statement right here, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ. We know that 1 goes with 1, 2 with 2, and 3 with 3, so A with X, B with Y, and C with Z. If you look at the picture, there's a reflection over a line, whoops, that was terrible. Let me fix that. If we draw a line, there would be like a line of reflection that we could draw right in between these. But it's kind of hard to maybe visualize what matches up because it's not just as obvious as it was up above. Okay, so instead, let's think back to our congruent statement. Triangle ABC right here is congruent to triangle XYZ. Now, keep in mind, whatever they give you, you're going to find that. So they give us a segment here. Segment AB for question 3 is congruent to A and B are the first two terms, so it's going to be congruent to segment XY. I take the first two terms from my congruent statement. A corresponds to X because they're both first. B corresponds to Y because they're both second. And likewise, C would correspond to Z. Okay. Now, number 4. This is another segment ZY. So it's third and then second. So we want to do the same thing. So it'll be segment CB. Number 5, angle Z. They just gave us an angle, so we're going to give an angle is going to be congruent to angle C. Z was the third term here, and C is the third term. Now, angle BAC, they give us 3 letters, so we want to do likewise. BAC will go congruent to YXZ. And then the final one, angle B, once again, they only gave us one term, so we can just say angle Y. Okay, now sometimes we're going to have to use this to then solve for different variables. So if we look here at example 8, it says find the values of the variables. So the variable right here is this x. Now, if we look here, ABD is this angle, and ABD was right here, the order they had. So we know CDB, angle CDB here, will also be the same. They'll be congruent. So if those are congruent, we can simply set them equal. 5x equals 75. At this point, it's a simple division problem. All we got to do is divide both sides by 5, divide by 5, and we will get x to equal 15. Okay. Now, on question number 9, same thing. Keep in mind, XYZ is congruent to FED right there. Now, if we look here, it says to find the different variables. Okay, so we have an x right here, a little x for 3x, and a little y right there. Now, I don't care which one you find first, but if we look at the 2y here, that's in angle D. D was the third term, so it matches up with the third term up there, which is Z. Z was 30 degrees. So all we have to do then is set 2y equal to 30. Once again, it's a simple division problem. Divide by 2. Divide by 2, we get y to equal 15. Okay, now the final one, this x, that's in a segment. Segment EF here on the bottom. Okay, segment EF, so the second and the first term, will be the same as segment YX. Segment YX here is 9, so all we have to do is set 9 equal to 3x, divide by 3, and we're going to get x to equal 3. Okay, now we got one final problem to look at here, and on this one, still finding the value of the variables. In our case, there's an x here and an x here, but they're the same variable. We just need to know what x is. Now, our job is to try to find what that x is. This one's a little different in that we have to use some clues. Not all of them are on the same triangle. However, these two angles, hopefully you remember, those are vertical, which means they will be the same. So if this one over here is 5x, I can draw my arrow in and know that that is also 5x. And then likewise, last week we talked about if this arc here, if I have an angle with an arc, this one will be the same as this one because they each have an arc. So I can move that 74 over here, and we know it's the same. At this point, I have all 3 angles of this triangle, and I know that all 3 angles always add up to 180. So I'm going to do 74 plus that 5x from the vertical angle plus 3x plus 2 equals 180. Okay, at this point we need to combine our like terms. So 5x and 3x, those ones will combine. We're also going to combine the 74 and the 2. Okay, and we're left with 74 and 2 gives us 76. Plus 5x plus 3x gives us 8x. All that equals 180. Okay, almost done. Subtract 76 from both sides. And we get 8x equals 104. Kind of running out of room. Let me scroll down a little bit. Okay, so now we divide both sides by 8. And we're going to get x equals 13. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.